Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Left to Dwight. Beavers are he's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart, streaming, it's Mountaineer pride. Leave no doubt tonight, no doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People are the state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast channel. September 26th edition, coming to you with our Snap Counts live stream a little bit later in the week than what we usually do. You know, we try and get this out on Sunday or Monday usually, but unfortunately been a crazy work schedule for me the past couple of days. And, you know, because of that, I put the player grades video out really early. I put it out really late Saturday night. As soon as the PFF grades came out, I jumped on that and put that out. So I knew that those would change a lot, but, you know, just because of my schedule, I wanted to still be able to get that video out to you guys, you know, try and keep up with our, you know, same schedule week to week here, get your player grades video out quick, get the snap count stream out, then the review podcast, and then, you know, move into the next week's content with the game preview and then, of course, the Q&A live stream with you guys where you guys give your predictions. So wanted to try and keep that schedule going despite the fact that I had some crazy things going on at work with work yesterday. I had to travel to Ohio for work, actually. So my plan was, you know, I left out, we had already recorded the Texas Tech, review podcast, had that in the can. So my plan yesterday was, you know, go on this work trip, come back, do this Snap Counts live stream, and then edit that podcast, get that up for you guys. I left out about 2:33 yesterday morning, went to Ohio, you know, came back. I figured I'd get home about 7 or 8 in the evening. Of course, you know, nothing ever goes according to plan, traffic and whatnot. I got home a little bit later than that, was really beat. So I was like, I'm not going to do this live stream tonight. I'll push it till the morning, but did get the podcast edited. So it'll be out shortly after I finish this stream. So once this stream wraps up, come back here probably around 10:30. It'll be up here on YouTube, and you can listen to Steven and I talk about our review of the Texas Tech game and review some of the other things that happened around the Big 12 in Week 4. If you want further thoughts on West Virginia's win over Texas Tech, I'll give those in the podcast, which, like I said, you'll find it here on YouTube shortly. It's probably already up on the audio version. If you follow us on podcast platforms, it's probably already up there. And as soon as I finish the stream here, I'm hitting the upload button and it'll be up here on YouTube shortly. But having said that, so that's one of the main reasons I'm coming to you guys early with a very rare, you know, early morning CRW live stream, doing this on Tuesday morning instead of, you know, the aforementioned Sunday, Monday. We try to get this out. But, you know, if you haven't been following throughout the season, this is kind of what we do, is like after the game, you'll get a video out from us detailing the player grades, top 5 on offense, top 5 on defense for Mountaineers. And I'm going to update those at the end of this video. Like I said, I released it earlier than what I usually do, so a lot of those ratings have changed. So I'm going to provide updates on both those to end this video, but you'll get that. You'll get our review podcast, and then I'll do this stream, which, like I said, typically comes Sunday or Monday, where I discuss the snap counts from the game, provide some injury updates, and then do a little projected depth chart for the Mountaineers for the upcoming week. So that's what we're going to get into here. If you're watching this on the playback, which I assume most people will be, with doing this so early. I appreciate you tuning in. Hit us a thumbs up button there. Drop any thoughts you got in the comments. I'll try and respond to it in text form when I can. If you do happen to be in here live, drop any thoughts you have there in the chat, and I'll catch up on them before I close this out. Try and keep it brief with it being an early morning stream, and we'll try and run through this quick, but let's get into it first. Let's lead off with the injury updates. Not too many to cover. I know the one that most people are worried about, of course, is the news about Garrett Green. He was available in an emergency situation, Neil Brown said, but sounded like, he was nowhere near really 100%. It would have been, him protecting himself, no run plays, probably really quick throws, handoffs would have been, the game plan if something would have happened and they would have had to call upon Garrett Green. But the fact that he was available in at least emergency role makes you believe that, he'll be at least available in that capacity, if not more, coming up against TCU. But Neil Brown a little bit non-committal on that. Personally, I'm just thinking, outside the box. Absolutely pure speculation here, but I would not be surprised to see Nico start again against TCU, them give Garrett Green that little extra time to heal up, because then they have that bye week coming up after that, and then Garrett would 100% be ready to go probably for the next game against Houston. But Neil Brown said it depends on practice this week. Garrett Green could surprise us and come out there and play against TCU. We'll see what happens moving forward, but not too many injury updates other than that one. We saw Justin Johnson make his return to the game, but there was one major injury update that came out of Neil Brown's press conference, and I was really sad to hear this one. This was a player I was really excited about, and it's two players now that I've been really excited about coming into West Virginia as transfers that I thought were going to make an impact on this Mountaineer defense that unfortunately have now been lost to the season. I was curious why Keyshawn Cobb didn't get any playing time against Pittsburgh. Neil Brown hadn't really covered that, but then he finally did this week. He's been kind of mum on injuries for the most part, except for when it's been pointed out. But Neil Brown said he's going to get surgery and will be out for the year. Didn't go into further detail, as Mike Ostie states in this article from WVSportsNow.com, but one, I guess, the silver lining with the Keyshawn Cobb side, as opposed to the Montre Miller one, which reported on, a week or two ago. Montre Miller, this was set to be his final season, so he'll have to petition the NCAA for a waiver to try and come back and play for West Virginia next year. But Keyshawn Cobb did have a redshirt year available, so he will actually be able to return, and we should get to see him still play for WVU, and that's good to hear, because I think he's a guy that can make an impact when he does get a chance to get on the field. Hate to hear that he went down with an injury, but, shout out to the West Virginia defensive backfield, right? This secondary continues to play well over the past two games, and that's without two guys that I thought would really be big pieces in that secondary. So, some guys are stepping up there for West Virginia. Hate to see Keyshawn Cobb go down. Hate to see Montre Miller go down, but the West Virginia secondary is at least performing well right now, and may just need some of the young guys down the line to step up. We've talked about Jacoby Spells and our injury, Wilson Lamp at the cornerback position. Marcus Floyd looked really good in this game against Texas Tech, but now you may need one of those young safeties to come into their own and get some playing time this season. We've seen Avery Wilcox, the walk-on, get into the action, but who knows who else may be thrust into there later in the season. Maybe Aiden Nelson, gets action earlier than they're expecting. Maybe he tries to play in, up to the 4 games that he can and still redshirt, because with Keyshawn Cobb out for the year, I don't know if West Virginia can rely on playing just 3 safeties across the 2 positions all year long, especially with Marcus Floyd, playing that nickel spot. We'll discuss how many snaps he played exactly in this game, but it was a lot against Texas Tech. So with all 3 of those safeties playing significant snaps, if they're going to continue, that method, you're going to need another safety in the mix, especially with Keyshawn Cobb out. So we'll see what happens there, but that's pretty much all I have as far as injury updates are concerned this week. Like I said, not too many. The only other ones that I could report on would be Davis Mallinger and Austin Cave. Both appear to remain out for the foreseeable future, I guess you could say, especially in Mallinger's case. It seems like he's not yet rehabbed from that injury that he suffered. So that's all we have on injuries. Like I said, they've not been speaking too much about them, but when they have been asked, they have provided minimal updates, and that's what we have so far. But let's get into the snap counts now. The snap counts from the game against TCU not TCU. I keep saying that. I've already switched my mind over to, it being TCU week now. So I keep mistaking Texas Tech for TCU. But the snap counts in the game against Texas Tech, of course. Let me run through these. I'm going to take a swig of my coffee, of course. Like I said, Tuesday early morning stream, so I got my coffee. Hopefully you all do too as you're starting your day this week. Hope everybody's having a terrific Tuesday and has continues to have one. But let me wet my whistle, and then we'll run through the snap counts. There we go. There we go. No better way to start the day. That's only about my third cup so far, 9:30. That's not too bad, right? But running through, it'll start off on the offensive side. Obviously, West Virginia at the quarterback position. One man ran the whole show, the whole game. Nico Marchiol, 69 snaps. Running backs, West Virginia was able to get all four into the action as Justin Johnson's finally seeming healthy enough to get involved into the game plan for the Mountaineers. C.J. Donaldson led the way with 38 snaps, followed by Jalen Anderson with 21. And then aforementioned Justin Johnson did get 8 snaps. And then my guy, you've heard me love Jaheim White. That's one of my favorite players on the roster. 6 snaps for him in the game. And then Luke Hamilton at the fullback position continues to get on, a handful of snaps per game up to this point. And you love to see it. Had 2 in this game. One of those being West Virginia's lone touchdown run in the game by C.J. Donaldson, in which he led the way for there on the goal line. Love seeing him being on the action for the Mountaineers throughout this season as they're playing this kind of physical style on offense. It's pretty awesome. Wide receivers, Devin Carter with 43, Cortez Braham with 42 to kind of pace the wideouts there. And, of course, the wideout position is something that we're looking to see improvement from moving forward. Left a little bit to be desired. Like I said, I don't want to get into too much of my thoughts here on the Texas Tech game because those are coming up in the review podcast that's releasing on the channel right after this stream's done. So check out our thoughts there on that episode. Releasing shortly, like I said, already out on the audio side if you want to get a jump start on that. But Preston Fox, 34 snaps, and Traylon Ray, the most snaps he's seen all season, I do believe. 23 snaps for him in this game for the true freshman. Seems like he's going to continue to be more involved in the game plan now that he's fully healthy as well. Hudson Clement, 22 snaps, but continues to impress. Got away from the defense multiple times in this game. One time should have been a sure touchdown for West Virginia. And it's impressive that in the Power 5 matchups, after Duquesne, we were wondering if that would continue. But, he hasn't had that many receptions, but he has been open multiple times against both Pitt and Texas Tech, doing a great job creating separation. So I think we'll see more from him moving forward. And I think we'll also see more from Rodney Gallagher III, the true freshman, one of the higher rated recruits in recent history for West Virginia. Got 8 snaps in this game, targeted once in the passing game, then also had a very nice end around run for a first down, which he broke tackles, had a nice spin move on, and you see a little bit of his, cut ability, his quick twitch ability, and his speed on that run. West Virginia, using him in gadget plays right now, but hopefully gets a little bit more involved in the, traditional passing game moving forward. E.J. Horton got in on 3 snaps, but one of those, they targeted him deep, and he had burnt the defense. We saw that speed. The throw was just a hair off, or it would have been a big play. I think he's going to continue to play more. West Virginia may target him more. Only 3 snaps in this game. And then Jarrell Williams got 1 snap. Neil Brown mentioned after the game they're going to shorten this wide receiver rotation. So, you'll probably see these guys moving forward, or maybe even less Jarrell Williams and more of just the other guys involved there. Didn't see Jeremiah Aaron. Seems like he's kind of out of the loop for the time being. We'll see how long that goes on. But it's interesting that he noted shortening the wide receiver rotation when we haven't really seen a ton of Jashawn Polk or Noah Massey, who were transfers in at that position that we thought would help West Virginia this season. But maybe they'll be able to get involved down the line. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Tight ends, of course, it was Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis, the 2 main factors there. 60 snaps for Cole Taylor, 31 for Traylon Davis. Then on the offensive line, it was mainly your starters. The only exception being when Thomas Remack went down for a series or 2 with an ankle injury. But that's the other injury update that I failed to mention. Neil Brown said that he was all right. He's good to go. He healed up good, came back in later in the game, and I believe that he's going to be fine moving forward. And then was asked about C.J. Donaldson. C.J.'s just, little bumps and bruises that you get at the running back position, especially running in between the tackles, the physical style runner that CJ is. But he said other than that, he's fully healthy, but, noted that he wanted him to play better moving forward. So maybe that motivates CJ, and we see a great game from him this week. But along that offensive line, 69 snaps apiece for your left tackle, Wyatt Milam, your center, Zach Frazier, your right guard, Brandon Yates, and your right tackle, Doug Nestor. Thomas Remick, like I said, dealt with the injury through part of the game, so he played 57 snaps. When he was out for the 12 snaps, Jaquay Hubbard covered him and didn't miss a beat, looked really good doing so. And then Nick Malone did get 3 snaps, and you see the asterisk there beside of his name, and that's because he actually was kind of lined up as a tight end for the Mountaineers on those 3 snaps. They've been using him in that capacity, but really it's just to get another blocker on the field. I don't think he's going to go out and catch any passes. I mean, they could surprise some people and try and sneak him out there eventually, maybe, on the goal line or something, but definitely being utilized as an extra blocker, which is pretty cool to see West Virginia, running 3 tight ends at times this season, as we've seen them play, a brand of old school football, I guess you could call it, a little bit more traditional style at times this season, especially with how they're dominating run versus pass ratio. But flipping over to the defensive line, you see a lot of snaps for the defense in this game, and that was kind of to be expected. They played, faced 80-plus snaps from the Texas Tech offense. A lot of those coming in the second half when Texas Tech was able to get their run game going and turn up the tempo a little bit. But when you're facing a high-tempo attack, you're going to face 70, 80 snaps, as opposed to what West Virginia had been facing defensively, earlier this season. So I think this was a great test for them, and they looked good doing so against Texas Tech, and that's good because TCU and Houston, both teams you're coming up here, are going to play on the road, are going to utilize tempo as well. So West Virginia didn't appear to get gassed, as you see the defensive linemen, a couple of them playing 50-plus snaps, but still played well, so that's good to see. And those defensive linemen were Sean Martin and Eddie Vesteranen. Sean Martin playing 55 snaps to lead the D-line, Eddie V getting 53. Mike Lockhart himself playing 46 snaps. That's impressive, especially when they talked about last season. The reason that he didn't get into more of the action was he wasn't quite in playing shape for the position, but seems like he's really come around now. 46 snaps in this game. Tomi Durajaye has been impressive this season as a pass rusher for the Mountaineers, leading the team in sacks, 19 snaps in this game. Asani Redwood, glad to see him starting to get on the field extensively. Got a lot of potential. He battled through injury, and the redshirt freshman, I think, will continue to be involved for the Mountaineers. 17 snaps. Fatorma Mulba, we've seen him playing about 15 snaps a game, maybe a bit of the same situation I just mentioned with Mike Lockhart, just working on getting him into more, better shape to where he can play more extensively as well in the future, because he's a force when he gets in there on his minimal action always, every game this season pretty much. 16 snaps in this game and made an impact again. Jalen Thornton with 14 snaps as well, getting involved at that tackle position, as did Day Hawkins. 10 snaps, got in on a sack even, and he's been disruptive as we kind of expected him to be, coming in as the transfer from Tennessee State. And then 7 snaps for Hammond Russell to round out the defensive line. The bandit position, your 2 guys you've been playing there this season. Jared Bartlett, who seems like he's been here forever, really is starting to play good football this season. 57 snaps total for him. And then Tyron Bradley, the transfer in from Abilene Christian. I've been impressed with his play this season. He's been a force at times. 38 snaps for the Mountaineers. And I like what West Virginia is doing, scheming up, some of these 3rd and long situations when they get both of these guys on the field together, sometimes on the same side of the field, sometimes on opposite sides of the field, and then also getting Marcus Floyd involved at the nickelback position as well helped, bringing him off the edge. So they really had a lot of pass rushers coming at Texas Tech, and I think it helped disrupt their offense a lot. And the Bandits playing great for West Virginia this season. That's something we've talked about in the past, is lack of production at that position, and seems to be improving. Then the linebackers that got action, it's mainly been Trey Lathan and Lee Koba, of course. Talked about Tyreek Austin Cave's injury, but Ben Cutter, the true freshman, seems like he's starting to see the light come on to where he's finally going to get involved in the action, and he looked really good on his 9 snaps. Pressured the quarterback, forced a couple of incompletions as he did in the game against Pittsburgh as well, and I really like what I'm seeing from the youngster. I think he's going to be a player down the line. But over 70 snaps for Lee Koba and Trey Lathan, who have both been absolutely phenomenal for the Mountaineers, attacking at the linebacker position. Both, near the top in tackles every week, near the top in PFF grades every week. So love seeing that from Trey Lathan, really coming into his own, a guy with high potential. 74 snaps from him. And then, of course, Lee Koba, very steady, absolutely physical force for the Mountaineers, 70 snaps in this game. Spear position, now this is probably the most interesting thing that stood out to me dealing with these snap counts, because Hershey McLaurin actually got the start for West Virginia, which has been the case all season pretty much, and he's usually outpaced Lance Dixon, or they've been pretty close in snap count. But in this game, Lance Dixon was really called upon and counted upon to be the guy at the spear position, more or less, even though he didn't start the game. Hershey McLaurin only got 6 snaps as opposed to Lance Dixon playing 41 there. But I think both of those guys' snap counts were down because, as I said, West Virginia was using Marcus Floyd kind of as a nickel cornerback. So that kind of, in effect, replaces that spear position. And he got a lot of those snaps instead of those guys. So I think that's why you see their snap count down, his snap count up, which we'll get to momentarily. But before we do, the cornerbacks, we've seen West Virginia mainly utilizing Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin. Knew they'd probably have to throw, so at least someone else into the mix defensively here, with Texas Tech playing a lot of snaps using tempo, but they only got, one other person in the action, and that was number 6, and he got 6 snaps, Jacoby Spells. So Andrew Wilson-Lamp, although Neil Brown was quick to point out he's been playing well on special. Seems like, after starting the season as a starter and struggling, he's definitely falling down the pecking order a little bit, and it's going to be maybe a few before West Virginia is able to trust him and put him back out there. And also, it just goes to show, and you got to tip your cap to Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin, because they're doing such a great job that the coaches don't want to take them off the field. They had to a little bit in this game just for rest purposes and stuff, get Jacoby Spells in there a little bit to spell Malachi Ruffin on those 6 snaps you see. But Beanie Bishop is really the guy. They said they were counting on him to lock down one side of the field this season. He's done it for the most part and done a great job of it. 83 snaps, played, the entire way for the defense. So awesome for him there, being an Iron Man. And then especially what he did late on the final Texas Tech drive. He had to be tired playing those 83 snaps, but got past breakups and was one of the big reasons West Virginia was able to get the stop they needed to secure this win. So shout out to the West Virginia cornerbacks. They were much maligned, but they've really performed well in recent weeks. And then the safety position, Aubrey Burks went the whole way as well, 83 snaps, and we saw what the coaches have been raving about all off season with him in this game. Excellent performance. Anthony Wilson looked good playing the cat safety position as well in his 70 snaps. And then Marcus Floyd, got to talk about him, 62 snaps. I've teased it a little bit throughout discussing these snap counts, but loved what I saw from him playing that, nickel spot some, and then even spelling, at deep safety. He can do both of those things for West Virginia. Very versatile, but I really like him at that nickel spot. That's kind of more what he played at the FCS level, and he looked a lot more comfortable there, and did not expect him to be that good of a blitzer in this game. So great performance from him and his 62 snaps. So there we have the snap counts there for the Mountaineers. And, as I tend to do, I like to use the injury report that Neil Brown provides, the snap counts from the previous game, to kind of project out a depth chart for this coming week. West Virginia hasn't really been releasing a ton of depth charts. I believe they finally did release, one just ahead of the start of this Texas Tech game, but the accuracy of it is, not exactly correct. It hasn't really made too many changes. So I've been trying to update it week to week here with what we've been seeing on the field, plus what happens injury-wise, and, using the snap counts to kind of determine what's going to come up the next week. So that's what I'll get into here in just a second, is my depth chart projection for this week. But let me take a swig of coffee real quick, and then we'll hit that depth chart projection, and then I want to briefly update the PFF grades before we close out here. But appreciate you guys tuning into this CRW live stream here, September 26th edition. All right, there we go. Hey, we do got somebody in here live. Grant Wiley Esquire. Appreciate you tuning in, man. He says Marcus Floyd has been huge since his return. Absolutely, he really has. Was not expecting him to have that big of a impact on this defense, especially when they go out and, get a guy at the safety position, in essence, to kind of replace him at that cat safety spot. But Marcus Floyd, he could have got down when that happened, but instead he's really came into his own and looks, worlds better than he did last season, and was a huge reason West Virginia was able to get that win. Absolutely, Grant Wiley Esquire. Appreciate you tuning in and chiming in here. Glad to see you up here on this Tuesday morning. Knew with it being live wouldn't be a ton of interaction, so that's why I didn't even put the call out for questions really like I usually do on these streams. But if anyone else is in here live and wants to chime in with any thoughts, questions, concerns, I'll address those before we head out. No, most people will be tuning in on the playback. So if you are, drop yours in the comments and I'll try and respond in text format. But let me get into my projected depth chart for this week for West Virginia. At quarterback, I just kind of went with the or here. Obviously, I think it's going to be these two guys. Last week I threw Sean Boyle on at the oar with Garrett Green, but from the sounds of things from Neil Brown when he was asked about it in his press conference this week, sounds like they're not ready to, call upon Sean Boyle if it came to that. I think that's why they got Garrett Green ready enough to where they could put him in an emergency situation where Neil Brown said they felt like he could protect himself. But although I think Sean Boyle has good potential and down the line could be a player for West Virginia, he's just very young. True freshman head's probably still spinning a little bit at the moment. So Neil Brown said him and Scott Keene are actually in competition for that third quarterback spot, with Scott Keene is the walk-on quarterback for the West Virginia. They have a few of those preferred walk-on quarterbacks on the roster, with Markiol and Green and Boyle being the only scholarship quarterbacks. So because of that reason, that's one of the only changes I made on the offensive depth chart here, was taking Sean Boyle off and just kind of putting Nico Markiol and Garrett Green both at the one slot with the or in between, because Neil Brown kind of left it open. If I was a betting man, I would say Nico would probably get most of the run again against TCU, but I've been wrong before, be wrong again. Garrett Green's going to do everything he can to be ready, and we'll see what happens then if he is 100% healthy for that game. But running back position, like I said, the depth chart that the university's been releasing, the one they released ahead of the Texas Tech game, even also still had CJ Donaldson and Justin Johnson, but obviously that just doesn't reflect what we've seen. Now, maybe it will with Justin Johnson being fully healthy again. We'll see moving forward, but he's been back and played in the past 2 games, and Jalen Anderson's outpaced him in snaps and in carries. So to me, it's pretty clear that that's your 1 and 2 back. So I keep, putting Jalen Anderson here number 2, and will continue to do so until, something changes snap counts wise, carries wise moving forward. So I've got CJ Donaldson number 1, Jalen Anderson number 2 on my 2 deep here on my depth chart. And then the X wide receiver position, Hudson Clement has kind of moved into the starting role there, listed there on the depth chart, started there in this game, although Cortez Braham outpaced him in snaps and maybe in targets as well, if I'm not mistaken. I know he got called a couple of screens that looked like they were going to be big plays, didn't turn out that way, but those were kind of the main guys. And then EJ Horton, I had to throw in on the depth chart somewhere. All right. There we are. How long was my mic muted just now? Because I just now realized that I thought I muted it and it's not muted. So hopefully I wasn't muted just now and you guys heard that little spiel I just went on, but maybe I just missed the button. Either way, I know you can hear me now. So let's get into the top 5, defensive grades from this game since it's been updated. And that's where I felt like a lot of the changes were. I mean, there were changes on both, but the defensive changes were very significant because I know Beanie Bishop wasn't included in the original top 5. Don't believe Aubrey Burks was either. A lot of people were surprised by that, as was I. And they certainly are now very much included. And excuse me. And near the top of the list even. But number 5 was Toomey Durajaye, as I said, 69.4 defensive grade. Number 4, Lance Dixon. Talked about him outpacing Hershey McLaurin, and obviously he performed really well, and that was one of the reasons that he did so. 69.7 defensive grade, so that's the best I've seen him perform on PFF this season, and that's awesome, seeing him play that many snaps and performing that well. And then Beanie Bishop, number 3 on the list. Like we said, made a lot of big plays in this game, especially on Texas Tech's final drive. He ended up with the 76.6 grade, so he did jump into the top 5 there at number 3, third highest graded overall player for West Virginia on defense. And then Aubrey Burks, talked about his awesome performance. He ended up being number 2, actually, 78.4 defensive grade. And then number 1, all's right with the world here, seeing this guy wind up number 1, as Grant Wiley Esquire pointed out in the comments earlier in this stream. Awesome performance from Marcus Floyd, 78.9 defensive grade to lead the Mountaineers defensively. Now in the PFF grades, getting 62 snaps, most he's played all season, blitzing from that nickel spot, really made an awesome impact and comes out as the highest graded player on defense. And then offensively, let me look at these grades and see what changed here. Not as many changes. CJ dropped down out of the top 5. I believe he was actually number 1 in the player grades video that I did at the time. He drops down slightly, so he's still just outside the top 5, though, so still not a terrible performance right there as number 6 graded player. But West Virginia's offensive line continues to, perform highly on PFF week after week. And yet again, you see it this week. You get 3 offensive linemen in the top 5 highest player grades for West Virginia. And Brandon Yates and Zach Frazier were just outside, both in the top 10. So, but your 5 highest graded players on offense for West Virginia were actually Thomas Remick with a 64 grade on offense. That's good, especially, battling injury like he was when he came back in the second portion of the game after he was out for those couple series. And then Hudson Clement, 64.5 offensive grade. Like I said, he's been getting open. He hasn't been getting the targets necessarily or, getting thrown the ball when he's been, open on those things, or sometimes those throws have been off. We saw him wide open for what should have been a touchdown. He's continuing to, perform at that position, and that shows in the grades here, 64.5. And then how about the third highest graded player here? Only played 6 snaps, as we detailed earlier in the stream, but my guy, Jaheim White, 65.1 grade. I think they've got to get him involved a little bit more in the game plan as far as some of those design screens they're running for some of these other players. Maybe draw one up for Jaheim or, do something like that for him. I just want to see him get the ball in space and really where he can really make something happen, because I'm just waiting on him. We saw it a little bit against the Duquesne game, but he's going to make a big explosive play here in the next coming weeks. Watch out for it. But Jaheim White in his minimal snaps, third highest graded player on offense for West Virginia. And then your other 2 tackles right here are your top 2 highest graded players on offense for West Virginia. And, they've both been awesome this season. Doug Nestor and Wyatt Milam. We talk about Zach Frazier being the best center in the country, but West Virginia really has 3 offensive linemen that have been dominant. And, that's not a knock on Thomas Remick and Brandon Yates, have been playing great as well on the interior for West Virginia. But Nestor and Milam have been outstanding, been difference makers. West Virginia, running off tackle a lot this season, and they've really done a good job setting the edge, and that's why they've been grading out high, along with their pass protection as well. But 68.1 grade for Doug Nestor, coming out number 2, and then Wyatt Milam, highest graded player on the West Virginia offense. And so that goes hand in hand with what Neil Brown said, that he thought Wyatt Milam was the best player on the field in the game against Texas Tech. PFF certainly agrees when it comes to offense, 72.5 grade. So there's the kind of regrades of the that PFF put out. So wanted to update those for you guys here before we closed out. But appreciate you guys, tuning into this early morning CRW live stream here, updating the snap counts this week, coming, a day later than what I usually try and get this out. But know a lot of people will be tuning into this on a playback with it being an early morning stream. So if you are doing that, drop us a like. That really helps. Subscribe to us if you're a WVU fan and you haven't already. Plenty of West Virginia content coming out this week and moving forward throughout football and basketball season. Starting, in just a few short minutes here on the channel, you can check out our Texas Tech Review podcast, and you can already listen to it on the audio side. So subscribe to us on any podcast platform as well. If you don't already, just search Country Roads Webcast. Be sure to follow us on social media. You see the Twitter X handle on the bottom there at WVU Country Roads. Then we're just Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram. But we'll be back later this week, probably Thursday or Friday night, with our Q&A stream where we can hear your all's predictions, get your all's predictions for the game against TCU. And in between then, you'll be able to hear ours. Like I said, Texas Tech Review podcast coming out today, but the TCU preview podcast will be releasing over the next couple of days as well. Well, you hear our predictions, and then we'll be back later in this week to hear your all's predictions for the game and chat with you guys on your all's thoughts on that matchup with the Horned Frogs as West Virginia travels to Fort Worth Saturday night for a Big 12 night game there, 8 p.m. Eastern kick, 7 p.m. Central time there in Fort Worth. So hopefully West Virginia is able to, continue being unbeaten in conference as they are right now, 1-0 in conference, 3-1 on the season. But that'll wrap us up here on this week's Snap Counts live stream. Appreciate you guys. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.